how to take a really good job brief. So you've got in front of your client, you've arranged a call or a meeting, so you can take a job brief over the phone, or you can do it via Zoom or Teams. Sometimes this might be led by the client, so they might have a preference to do it on Teams, or sometimes it's sort of very fluid and you can steer it to a call if you want to. There's no right or wrong as such. The advantage to obviously going through Teams or Zoom is that you can record it, you can add a note taker if you want, so it does give you that extra information, helps you just retain the information that you're taking, just be able to refer back to it. So there is some benefits to that. However, let's focus on what you're going to get from it. So ultimately, especially at the start, don't overthink this. Just ask lots of open questions if you're new to this. Just get the client to start talking about the role. In an ideal world, you want the jobs to be sent to you ahead of taking the brief, but the reality is that might not always be the case. But obviously, if you have received the job spec prior to your client call or meeting to take the job brief, then you've got a really good basis to go from in terms of the skills required. If you haven't got that, you still just need to start asking questions. So how has this role come about? And then just like shut up and get them to talk and just start listening. Everybody just respects and responds to someone listening to them. So don't interrupt, obviously, just listen. And then just take each question, ask them what the priorities for the role are. Ask them to talk about the organisation as a whole. What the direction of the organisation. So just lift it a little bit from the spec as well at some point to be able to absorb a bit more detail around what the organisation's about, so that you're in a position to sell that and represent them clearly to your candidates. And then sort of going back to the raw skills, like make sure you ask them to really prioritise, because what's written in a spec, typically the most important skills are at the top and it works its way through, but that's not always the case. So ask them to draw out what is an absolute priority. Where is the gap in the team? What's the non-negotiable? What do they need to see on the candidate CV basically? And just get them to obviously walk you through and almost give you an introduction to the organisation as a whole. So and over time you will obviously get more skilled at this to be able to know about the nuance to the skill sets that you recruit and what some of the jargon, and you'll be able to just slightly decipher that a bit clearer and then be able to demonstrate your market knowledge whilst taking the brief. This will come over time. For example, if a skill set has a bit of a ratio, a typical ratio of like system skills, for example, then there might be a management element, there might be reporting skills required. So one of your questions could be, what sort of ratio would you say the skills split across A, B and C, whatever that might be? So by asking questions like this, you are demonstrating your skill. You can sort of then refer and go, typically we would see X, Y, Z. Would you agree that was the same for this role? I get them to correct you if they feel for whatever reason, no, it's we see it this way, or that they'll sort of nod along and they'll respect that you have got the experience and knowledge of what these skills look like, what your candidates are looking for. Begin to talk around not people necessarily, unless you really feel that you've got a strong candidate that fits and meets it's what the client is telling you. You can start selling in the sort of clients that you work with. Just sort of begin to test the water towards the end of the job brief as well, so that you can get the sort of head nod and just get a feel for the urgency as well. So if you start to sell in the skills, then obviously it's going to massively increase your chances of obviously firming up the terms, which is another big part of the brief. You want to just make sure all that's sorted, and by sort of potentially selling in the skills towards the end of candidates that you work with, you're increasing the urgency as well, and they're going to be looking out for your email, which will obviously have the candidates presented. So it's hard to go through the details of a brief, obviously, because it's going to vary for everyone in terms of the exact questions, because of obviously the sector that you specialise in is going to be so different. But what you're actually getting from it is obviously the same. So you've just got to have a great deal of clarity in the nitty-gritty information that you need to be able to present this job to your candidates. But equally as well, you've got to be gaining the rapport and the relationship with the hiring manager, so that they want to deal with you. They recognise that you're somebody that knows what they're doing. So that's basically what the brief is all about. And then most importantly as well, of course, just tying up and making sure those terms are agreed before submitting any candidates. You don't want to just be fingers crossed, let's hope it works. You want to make sure that the terms are agreed as part of that meeting or telephone call. And also begin to map out the process, agree what the next steps are as well, because that just, it's professional, and it also just gets a bit more commitment from the client as well in terms of what the process looks like, so that you can explain to your candidates as well. There's going to be an initial screening call, then it's going to be a face-to-face competency-based interview, and finally there will be a Teams call with a senior member of the leadership team. So that's a 3-stage process. So you want to just make sure you get the process mapped out during your briefing call as well. If you got any other questions on this, give us a shout. As I say, there's quite a lot of nuance, but in a nutshell, that's what your briefing call should look like.